So, Bradley Manning, you know. Now, he's in the military, and there are probably some, debate on exactly how and what to do, but let me tell you, Bradley Manning didn't kill anybody. Bradley Manning hasn't caused the death of anybody. And what he has exposed, he is equivalent to Daniel Ellsberg, who told us the truth about Vietnam. And when Daniel Ellsberg was under the gun, the government wanted to crack down on the exposure on the New York Times. The New York Times, printed the material that Ellsberg released, and that went to the Supreme Court. And Ellsberg did not go to prison. He was upheld, and New York Times did not suffer either the consequence of this. So we're at this point, but just think right now, I'm afraid that if we took a poll across the country, and they say, should we try Assange for treason?
No.
But most Americans are going to say, oh yes, he's a bad guy. He's telling us all these secrets. But guess what? He's an Australian citizen. And you read about all the time. Let's try him for treason and bring him to the United States. So we have so much power and clout, even Sweden is submitting to saying, well, he gets here, we'll drum up some false charges and we'll send him over to the United States so he can have a fair trial. But those are the kind of things, those are the problems that we need to worry about, that we need to be concerned about, but they're also the kind of things that we can reverse, and that should be our goal, to change this, to know what a free society is all about, to know where we are, and what we need to do. We don't have to invent it. We've had a good taste of it. We don't have to go back to a static period in the 19th century because there were a lot of problems. Even the gold standard can be improved upon. So we want to advance the cause. I think the cause of individual liberty actually started in 1215, got a tremendous boost with our revolution and our Constitution. But we don't want to say we're going back. The people who want tyranny, want big government, that's what is ancient, and that is what we should worry about. They're the ones who want to go back to the Dark Ages. So, how do we look at today? 2012. Like 1913, and we're starting all over again and bringing in a new system. Is it 1917 with the Sovietization and the communization of the world? The 1930s where we had fascism and Keynesianism and all the mess we have, and then the 50s and the advancement of, or now are we going to have to live with the Neocons? Or are we going to say, we're living in a new era, we're going to start something different, completely different from all that? In 1935, Sinclair Lewis wrote a novel. It Can't Happen Here. And that novel essentially was a warning because he believed it could happen here. It was an anti-fascist novel because he was very concerned about Mussolini and the Nazis. And his argument was that it can't happen here. But I would like to turn that around and say it can happen here. What can happen here, though, not in the next, there can happen that we reverse this. If we don't believe it can happen, we have a third of a chance. We can turn it around if we put the work and effort into it. Some people will still be negative and they say, yeah, but have you seen a revolution that really has turned out, all through the 20th century, so many revolutions and wars to end wars and all that, it never happened. And right now we still have neocons all over the place. They aren't all in one party either. They're in all both of them. the parties, and that's what we have to be challenged. But there have been times in our history, in the history world, where there has been success. You know, in 1850, the British passed a law. It was called the Repeal of the Corn Laws. And it was an introduction into free market economics, repealing, mercantilism and protectionism, and ushered in the age of the Industrial Revolution. And it was a difficult time. Peel, who was the representative, had this passed. He worked for many, many years, and it was finally passed. And it was smoothly. There were a lot of special interests involved, but it worked, it was smoothly, and they transitioned from mercantilism into a much better system. You know, in 1919, they decided in this country that we were going to take care of the American people to make sure your habits, and American people's habits, were wise and frugal. And so they passed this prohibition of alcohol. And it was an absurdity. It didn't work. But what happened by the early 1930s? By 1933, the people rose up and said, this is ridiculous. Prohibition is bad. And they repealed prohibition. So someday we're going to wake up and say the same thing about all drugs and say, right now we're getting a lot more support for this. Repeal these drug laws and the crime associated with the drug laws.
Cannabis cures.
Roosevelt took over. He ran believing his program in 1932 was balanced budget. He had the most conservative platform because Hoover wasn't doing such a good job. And he said that he would defend the gold standard and balance the budget and cut spending. Well, that didn't exactly happen because the first thing he did was made it illegal for an American citizen to own gold. I mean, that really told you something about what was happening. But it was illegal to own gold all the way up until 1975. So in 1975, why is gold illegal? And a law was passed, and once again we moved back in a direction, and the American people could own gold. It's a very important issue. In a free society, don't give up your right to own precious metal, and don't give up your right to own a weapon to defend yourself. So in 1985, once again, as a consequence of the Gold Commission, one thing that they came out of that, what we came out with, they would not go along with the views that I had on gold at the time, and they said, well, we'll throw in something, so why don't we go back to minting gold coins again? Far from imperfect, not a good standard, but it was a big thing. It was a big deal for us to take something minted. It was one of the few constitutional authorities that we have to mint gold and silver coins. So that was restored in 1985. Point being is that it isn't inexorable that we move in the wrong direction. We can start moving in the other direction. If you would have asked me 5 years ago that we would have get the attention of the nation and we would have get the attention of establishment Republicans, even where they felt compelled to talk about it in the platform, that I never dreamed that we would get attention. Probably 75% of the American people say the Fed ought to be audited.
Woo! S202! S202! S202!
What is our big challenge? The big challenge is can we restore natural right, God-given rights to our people so that we emphasize the fact that return of liberty can solve so many of our problems. Economic policies means private property, contract rights, gold standard, and get the government out of this business of regulating the market. And property rights regulates quite well. Under those conditions, guess what happens in a free market? They say there'll be no regulations. No, the regulation is if you go bankrupt and you don't get bailed out by the government. question I think that we have to decide upon is which way are we going to go? We see the end of an era. Where is it going to go? And I think the choice is one or two. I do not think that there's going to be another Marxist come along and restore enthusiasm for Marxism. I don't think that tomorrow we're going to have the same thing as a Hitler or Mussolini, but I do think we have to worry about fascism. An expansion of what we already have, which is corporatism. The buddy system between big corporations, big banks, with the government. And that is the reason that we have to be on the side of saying, yes, if you're big and you made your money because you had special benefits and bailouts and protectionism from the government, that is wrong. But if you're big because you sold a good product to us and we bought it and you got rich, you have a right to be rich for doing that.
There's no government favor.
We do know that ideas do have consequences, and an idea, as I often say, its time has come, can't be stopped. I really believe we're here.
Can't be stopped.
We're not going to be able to stop us, but we have to learn to know how to spot the fluff, the baloney, get rid of it. Don't listen to it. But you just can't hit them over the head with a 2x4. It seems like maybe that's the best way to do it at times. You know, some people say that I have not been, I don't express my outrage enough. You should be more outraged. Look at what they're doing to you. How did you ever put up with that? What did you do all this? They'll say to me, how did you ever put it up with this in Congress 30 years and you're not yelling and screaming? Have you ever thought about it? What if I became outraged at everything they did wrong? I'd have been worn out in about 5 years for sure. We do need to sort it out. We do need to know the good ideas from the bad ideas. We do need to persuade people. And politics plays a role in this. And I feel very blessed that I was able to be a professional person who practiced medicine, which my wife described as something I love that I did. One of the reasons why I went back to my practice after being in Washington for 6-7 years. And politics is something that is beneficial. If I had not run for Congress, and I consider there was a lot of luck in politics and winning a seat, and I don't think there's any luck in taking your positions. I think that is a freedom of choice, and you make those decisions. So, but anyway, being in the right place at the right time has a lot to do with it. I think every one of us has a responsibility, because people in an audience like this know and understand the problem. You have more insight than essentially almost everybody in Washington. And I guess that's my challenge. But the difficult task is you have more responsibility. And you say, a lot of people say, well, and even in the introductions today, they talk about sacrifice. I don't think for a minute I sacrifice anything. I do it out of self-interest. I do it because I think it's good for me. I enjoy sorting out right from wrong, good ideas and bad ideas, and there's some fun in it. I always advise if you're in this business and you don't try to have some fun, like I hope you do the rest of the evening tonight too, so have some fun. Then you're going to get worn out. But once you come to the conclusion that you put this whole thing together, personal liberty, property rights, sound foreign policy, monetary policy, and then there's an enlightenment. It comes to enlightenment and you say, wow, this really comes together. So out of your own self-interest, you spread this message. Then you first educate yourself, study and learn how to give the answers. And you don't have to worry about what your job's going to be. If you know the answers and you speak out and you're available, somebody will use you. And it may be